Hi everybody, how are you doing today? Hope you are all well and safe. I recently made some brushes for Rebelle to use as watercolour brushes. I had a lot of fun making them. They're now available for free. You can get them through my website, link in the description below. But I also asked, do you want to know how to make your own custom brushes? Loads of people said, yeah, that'd be great. Love to know how to make my own brushes. So that's what this video is all about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a few marks that I can use for textures for these brushes. So I'm starting off with a round brush. There we are, and I'm just going to start making some marks. I'm using a fairly dark colour. They're probably a bit close together actually, and I could probably do with a bigger brush than this. You could make these digitally, of course, and I also want to sort of just press in the shape that the brush would make. Something like that. And it can do sweeping marks like that, just to give me some real organic looking textures that I can use in my painting. I think I could do some dry ones with hardly any water. Like that, that's it. That's the kind of a look I like when I'm painting trees. So I could use brushes like that. I can, I'm going to use a flat brush now. Just to make some square shapes. Let's do that. Just there. There we go. And maybe I might do couple of pencil marks. I should use a stick of charcoal or something. This is going to make me really dirty fingers though, but never mind. Just break a stick of charcoal off, make a mark with that. And I reckon that will give me enough textures to play around with to start making some brushes. I've just got to wash my fingers, and then I need to get these pictures onto my PC. So that will be the next stage. A bit of tissue and dry my fingers. I'll see you in a minute. So I've now taken a photograph of my brush textures. I brought them into Affinity Photo actually, and I need to break them down into individual textures. And I think the texture is the most important thing about a brush, because you kind of need an idea of what you want to achieve with the brush before you start. And one I really like is this dry brush here. So to select that, the easiest way to get these into individual textures is to choose the rectangle tool, hold the shift key down, and then draw a square big enough for that texture to fit in. And by holding the shift key down, it forces it to be a square. And then just use or you don't have to select anything else, just use the cursor to position that brush texture in the center of your texture. Then go edit, copy, and then file, new from clipboard, and there you have it. And you can do a bit of cleaning up if you want. What I did, I wanted to sort of get rid of the white background, so I chose the curves just to push the highlights up a little bit, just to burn them out, and bring the darks back down to give me a texture. And it's a bit blurred. Oops. Oh, that's okay. And it's a bit blurred, but you've got to remember this is way bigger than the actual brush size I want to be working with. The brush will actually be kind of that size. So it's only that I've got it so big that it looks blurred. And then once I've done that, I can file, and best thing to do is choose export and PNG and export that. The problem I had when I brought it into Rebelle, and I didn't realize this at the time, was that it has to be a transparent PNG, not a solid cut, with a white in there. So you've got to get rid of the white. And the way I did that, select the layer with the color on it, and then go to select, tonal range, and highlights. And then just hit the delete key, and then you've got a transparent PNG. It's rough and dirty, but it works for this. So if you are going to use, and then you can export that to your brush textures, and I've got quite a few down here, and there you can see my brush texture there. So this is the one I'm going to use because I want to create a dry brush effect. So it turned out to be quite a complex process to using actual photographed images of brush strokes. So I'm going to show you another way how to do it all in Rebelle if you haven't got any brushes or anything like that. But let's make the watercolor brush first, okay? Okay, so I have Rebelle opened up. I've got an A4 sheet of watercolor paper, standard paper, because if I start using different textures and custom papers, it's going to affect the brush. So I kept all that standard, and I want to create a dry brush. So this is how I would go about it. I've got the liner brush selected. That'll do, I suppose. That's the first brush available in the default brushes of the watercolor palette. So you need to have, if I'm making a watercolor brush, obviously we've got to have watercolor selected. I've chosen my brush. Then right down at the bottom, there's 3 little lines. You can click on that and it pops open your brush creator. You click it again, it disappears. Or you can go to window and click on brush creator from there. And then just click on the little line to pop that open. So this is the brush creator, and I've got it selected for this liner brush. So I can make changes to this liner brush. First of all, I'm going to change the texture, because I always do whenever I'm working on a brush. The texture is the first thing that I've worked with. So I'm going to choose my dry brush. There we go. I click that, and then we open up, and then you see we get this nice new texture. Now, I did say that you had to have a transparent PNG. This is what happened. This image here isn't transparent. It's white. It's black on white. So if I open that up, you can see we just get a solid black. So if you create an image and it becomes in a solid black, and you try and invert it and it's solid white, it probably means you've got a non-transparent PNG. So you need to make sure that you've made the background transparent. I'm going to open that, and it's got this white background and black brush shape. But if I paint with that, we get this sort of square edge. And that's because it's using the white space to create the brush effect. So I just need to invert that by clicking this last little button underneath the shape. It's the one on the right, and then that sort of, we get a much more brush stroke type effect. So now you might be thinking, Steve, hang on a minute, you are changing one of the default brushes. That I want to lose my brush. No, you don't, because it says here it's changed. So you can always just click back on there and reset your brush changes, and everything's back to the default brush. So once again, I'm now going to change this to my dry brush texture, click open and invert it. So I've got the basis of a brush. I'm not going to change the grain, I'm going to leave that as it is, but it's not very dry brush at the minute, is it? So what can we do? Well, first of all, I want to make sure I've got the texture pushed right up to 100% on the canvas. That means it will show you the canvas texture, and now you can see we've got hardly any paint. The more texture you get, but I want it up to 100% so we get lots of grain showing. So I've just, that's right at the bottom, just push that up, and I'll leave the scale as is. So we've got the size of the brush, and basically, well, I suppose we ought to push this multiplier. This is like your pressure, where you've got the pressure over here. This pressure controls all of these brushes. This one is custom to this particular one brush, so it's the same sort of thing. And now I've got a little bit of colour going on there, so a bit more pressure perhaps. And I can this size, by the way, if you look at this shape, we can, if we go down to sort of -100, starts off with a thick edge, then it goes thin. As you put more pressure on, you know, release the pressure, it goes thick again. So it kind of inverts the effect. You go the other way, then you get this thin to fat, so you can sort of create these type effects. But I want something that's just got a little bit of a tilt on it. So that's what the size is for. Now the opacity, if you've got it pushed right up, basically what it does, you'll see this brush mark up here. If I move it the other way down to 0, it inverts it. So if I go from with light pressure to heavy pressure, you can see the effect that has, what you'd expect. Light brush stroke, heavy brush stroke. If I push the opacity the other way and do the light brush stroke, you can see it goes opposite to, if it's really weird, it goes opposite to how you would feel. Now it might be for some reason you want to create that effect. So that's what the opacity does. So I'm going to just push that right up to 100. Let's put the multiplier up a bit more pressure. And this maximum sort of goes from, it means you get to the maximum level of pressure faster. Let's put the multiplier up to max and then just fiddle with this. So you need to just play around with these two until you get the effect you want. There we go. That's it. So that's given me a nice dry brush effect. So what does the spacing? Let's go through some of these other things. The spacing, if I bump that right up so you can see something ridiculous, you can see it spaces out the brush shape. So I'm taking that right down. If you got it, that's made a massive difference. So obviously very close together, you get this nice effect, dark effect and lights. If you spread them out a bit, but if you spread them out too much, you start, I don't know if you can see, you start to get a repeat pattern. So you can get rid of that repeat pattern by using some of these jitter effects a bit further on. So if I put the spacing up a little bit, I suppose if I put the spacing up, you'll see the effects that these other tools have. So I've put the spacing jitter up as well. See how it's changing the space between those brush strokes, and the scatter. That should sort of, let's clean the screen. Puts them all over the page. I kind of need, I'd like to see a dark. I'm going to just put the multiplier up and the maximum up. Let's put the opacity up. Just want to see more colour. Got this opacity here. There we go. That's it. Now you can see what's happening. So it's more like a stamp. If you put the scatter up and the spacing jitter, and you can, really you'd be using these in very subtle ways. Like that. So I'm going to knock them down. Now I've got, it's way too thick. So I think I'm going to take the, just try the opacity down on here. Right. Take the multiplier down a bit as well. Now we're starting to get the dry brush effect I want, because don't forget the multiplier is the pressure. So we're starting to get this lovely. Too much. It's just a matter of trial and error and feeling it till you get what you want. A bit more pressure look, lighter pressure. Getting this dry brush effect. If I change it to a blue, we should be able to see sort of nice sparkly water effect going off there. There we are. So size jitter, obviously, let's go back to this spacing again. Just space them out a little bit and put the size jitter up. I need to up the opacity so you can see it. Maybe put the opacity up here as well. And the multiplier, there we are. That's obviously changing the size of the pattern. And the angle, make them extreme. See, it's sort of, well, that actually it's not a jitter, that's the angle that your pattern makes. So you can sort of fine tune your texture if you're not happy with its starting position, but then you can do the jitter thing where it comes in all over the place. So you could make some really cool stamps and things with this. So let's put all these back. Oh, the opacity I wanted up. Let's delete that. Oh yeah, we want that spacing. I'll try it at 2, see what that does. And now obviously I've got way too much colour. I've got the multiplier up too high, and I've got to fiddle around again until I get the texture I want for this nice sparkly water effect. And there we go. I think that brush is pretty cool. I can change the I can make it a smudge brush, I suppose. Although that is not going to be what I want to do with this one. I'll turn that off, and we can scale the grain. 100%. Let's make that. I can't see that making much difference. Yeah, oh, it is. I can see. So you can adjust that to get the exact amount of grain you want showing. I'm going to take that down just a little bit more. A bit. Didn't like that. That's cool, because if I press on, get some nice dark colour, but if I do it light, get this sort of wispiness. That's it. So I have made a brush. Now, what I want to do now is save this. So I click on the three little dots of the brush creator and save as new brush preset. And it's put that there. It's called it Liner 2. So I'm going to drag that into my C8 brushes. See if it's put it there. Has it put it there? No. Let's see if I can get it in. There we go. Just touch it or double tap it, and I'll call it dry brush for now. And that, you'll see, it's no longer got this change there because it's a brand new brush. So you can, or if you can mess around with this all you want, you'll always get back to your default brush. And then if I go back to my original liner brush where it says changed, just go back and reset that brush change. There we go. So that's back to that. So that's how you make your own brushes. And I've created one there. Let's have a look at a pastel and I'll show you how to make a texture in Rebelle. So I said I would show you how to make a brush texture in Rebelle. So to do that, first thing we need to do is create a new canvas. So I'm going to click new. So I'm just going to go to screen, change that to pixels, just make this 500 pixels by 500 pixels and click OK. And the first thing you'll see, we've got this really thick grain, and we do not want that showing on our brush texture. So we go to Window and we choose Visual Settings. From there, Visual Settings, I'll just close the water one down for a second and open up Canvas. We have this texture visibility, just push that right down to 0. And then we have a layer 1, create a new layer. And layer 1, just switch that off, and I think that will give us a transparent background. Although it doesn't look transparent at the minute, it will be. And I'm going to create a pastel brush this time. So I go to pastels, and I've already created one, but I'm going to create a new one. I'm actually going to use this square brush, or maybe, yeah, I'll go with this square brush to create my new brush. So I need to select black, change the brush size down, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a vertical brush stroke like that. A bit ragged perhaps, nice and dark. And that's it. So you could do whatever you want on that and create that. And now we need to save that. So File, Save As. And I'm going to create this as a PNG file. We've got the background hidden or switched off. So it should be transparent. And I'm going to call it Pastel Stroke. We go, and I've saved that. So that process is all you need to do to create your texture. So if I go to here, and I'm just going to step back one because these are all my organic brushes, and I go back to textures, we should find in here my pastel stroke. There we are. So all that work I did with the paints and then taking a photograph of the images and then sizing them all up and making the background transparent. I've done it all in a few seconds by creating it in Rebelle. So you can do that. But don't forget, you need to invert that. And I'm using the pastel brush, and it says square hard, but it's now got this new texture. What I want to do now is just create a new document. Don't want to save that. And I'm just going to go back to print size A4 so we can start messing around with this and seeing what we've got. So we've got like the defaults, all the default settings are in my pastel brush, but I've got this new brush stroke. So I've got it all default, and straight away it feels like I'm not getting any colour on there, or hardly any. So why could that be? I think it's because maybe I need to just close this spacing down. It was at 10. That's certainly open. Let's put the grain. Push that up a bit. The multiplier. That's the one. Oh, that's really. Bit too much, isn't it? But what I've been able to do, look, you see, I've now got a brush that's like a pastel, but I can sort of use the edge of the pastel to get a nice thin line. And obviously if I'd have made this stroke thinner, I could have got a thinner line, or I can get a thick line. So depending on how I angle my brush and how much pressure I put on, I've got a nice custom brush or nice custom pastel. I might want a bit more texture actually. Let's write that up to 100%. Perhaps not quite as much multiplier. It's just about fiddling around with it, isn't it, to get the effect you want. A bit more. And there we go. I am happy with that. I've now got a brush that I can use to sort of create much more dynamic shapes than just a block. So it's as simple as that. There we are. That's how you make brushes in Rebelle. If you want to, I should really just to click on that, save as new preset, and then I'm going to rename it. What should I call it? Chiseled Pastel, I think. Spelled chiseled right. Chiseled Pastel. And then this square one here, I'll just go back to there and reset that brush. So I've now got a new chiseled pastel brush added to my collection. That's it. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, big thumbs up as always is much appreciated. It helps me out a lot. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I've got lots of videos like this, would love to be sharing them with you. If you've got any ideas of what you want me to demonstrate, if there's any apps you want me to try out, put that in the comments. I'm always up for trying new things. And don't forget everybody, stay safe, stay sane, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.